Top 10 Bloodiest Wars in Human History. Welcome back to our channel, where we share epic, emotional stories from history. If you're someone who loves exploring the past and wants to learn about battles that shook the world, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our most exciting videos. Today, we'll travel back in time to uncover the top 10 bloodiest wars in human history, where millions of lives were lost, mighty empires fell, and the world was changed forever.
World War II, 1939 to 1945, the nightmare of the 20th century. Over 100 nations took part, with battles raging across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. With an estimated 70 to 85 million deaths, it remains the deadliest war in history, ending with the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. 2. World War I, 1914 to 1918. Sparked by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, but truly a clash between massive military alliances. Trench warfare, machine guns, and chemical weapons appeared for the first time, leaving 15 to 20 million dead on the battlefield. 3. Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815. The hero, conqueror, and military genius Napoleon Bonaparte shook all of Europe. But his imperial ambitions came at a terrible cost: 3.5 to 6 million lives.
4. Three Kingdoms War in China, 184 to 280. An era of legendary figures such as Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan. Yet behind the glory lay a staggering death toll, 36 to 40 million lives lost.
5. Lushan Rebellion, 755 to 763. A massive uprising led by Lushan and Shi Siming against the Tang dynasty that nearly brought the empire to its knees. In just 8 years, 13 to 36 million people perished, one of China's greatest catastrophes.
6. Mongol-Song Wars, 1235 to 1279. The Mongol Empire, under the hoofbeats of Genghis Khan's descendants, crushed the southern Song dynasty, ending centuries of Chinese splendor. More than 30 to 40 million people lost their lives.
7. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864. A religiously inspired uprising led by Kang Shuquan, who proclaimed himself the Heavenly King, against the Qing dynasty. The toll, 20 to 30 million dead, leaving China shattered.
8. 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763. Often called World War Zero, this conflict spanned Europe, the Americas, India, and Africa. About 900,000 to 1.4 million deaths resulted from this unprecedented struggle for colonial dominance.
9. 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. What began as a religious clash between Catholics and Protestants in Europe turned into a ruthless power struggle among dynasties. 4.5 to 8 million dead, with Central Europe left in ruins.
10. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. A fiery conflict between North and South Korea, drawing in the United States, United Nations forces, China, and the Soviet Union. More than 2.5 to 4 million deaths, and the Korean peninsula remains divided to this day. Coming up next, we'll dive deeper into the details of each of these wars.
World War II, the greatest tragedy in human history. Opening, the spark that ignited the flames. 1939. Dark clouds hung over Europe, the air thick with unease. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler, a man consumed by the ambition to conquer the entire world, was preparing for his boldest move yet. On September 1st, the roar of thousands of German tanks thundered across the Polish border. Air raid sirens wailed across Warsaw. Within just 3 weeks, Poland fell, and from that moment, the flames of war spread across the globe. The world engulfed in fire and steel. Everywhere, the map of the world was painted red with the arrows of advancing armies. In Europe, Germany swept through Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and even mighty France in a matter of weeks. In Asia, Japan expanded its war from China down into Southeast Asia. The Yangtze River ran red, and the Nanjing massacre claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. Across Africa and the Pacific, fierce battles erupted without pause. World War II was not just a war of armies, it was a war of all humankind. Battles that shaped destiny. In 1942, the world held its breath as the Battle of Stalingrad raged. More than 2 million German and Soviet soldiers fought to the death in the freezing ruins. Every street, every building, every brick was soaked in blood. In the end, the Red Army emerged victorious, and the tide of war began to turn. That same year in the Pacific, the Battle of Midway transformed the United States from defender to attacker, sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers in just a few days. The Day of Decision, June 6, 1944, D-Day. 156,000 Allied soldiers crossed the sea and stormed the beaches of Normandy. Machine gun fire tore through the air, but step by step they advanced, liberating Europe from the shadow of fascism. When Nazi Germany finally collapsed, Hitler took his own life in a bunker beneath Berlin. But in Asia, Japan fought on. The United States delivered 2 final devastating blows, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 2 atomic bombs turned entire cities into oceans of fire. In mere seconds, over 200,000 lives vanished. On September 2, 1945, Japan signed an unconditional surrender. World War II was over, but it left behind 70 to 85 million dead, nearly 3% of the world's population at the time. Orphan children, shattered cities, and scars that ran deep into the human soul remain as eternal reminders of the price of war. 2. World War I, the war that ended the old era. The summer of 1914. Europe was entangled in a complex web of military alliances. On June 28th, in the city of Sarajevo, a gunshot rang out. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary and his wife were assassinated. What seemed like a local incident ignited a deadly chain reaction, one that would drag the entire world into war. Allies and enemies. Nations rushed into the conflict like dominoes falling in sequence. Central powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria. Allied powers, Britain, France, Russia, later joined by Italy, the United States, and many others. The map of Europe quickly turned into a sea of blood. Trains carried millions of soldiers to the front lines. Everyone thought the war would be over in a matter of months. They were wrong. Hell in the trenches. On the Western Front, from the coast of France to the Swiss border, thousands of kilometers of trenches were dug. Soldiers lived in mud, among rats and the stench of death. Every day, thousands fell, often just for a few meters of ground. The Battle of the Somme in 1916, over 1 million casualties, one of the bloodiest battles in history. The Battle of Verdun in 1916, nearly 300 days of fighting, with the rallying cry, "They shall not pass," becoming a symbol of defiance. A truly global war. The fighting didn't stay in Europe, it spread to the Middle East, Africa, and the Pacific. In the Arabian Desert, Lawrence of Arabia led a revolt against the Ottoman Empire. At sea, German U-boats sank supply ships indiscriminately, even civilian vessels like the Lusitania. In 1917, the United States declared war on Germany after repeated submarine attacks and the interception of the Zimmermann telegram. American industrial and military power helped tip the scales in favor of the Allies. 1918. Germany launched its spring offensive, throwing everything it had before American troops could fully arrive. But by summer, the Allies counterattacked relentlessly. In November 1918, exhausted and out of options, Germany signed the armistice. The terrible cost. World War I claimed between 15 and 20 million lives, with millions more wounded or permanently disabled. The map of Europe was redrawn. But the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, imposing harsh terms on Germany, planted the seeds for an even greater catastrophe, World War II.
3. The Napoleonic Wars, the ambition and fall of an emperor. At the end of the 18th century, France was in chaos after the French Revolution. Amid the political storm, a young general from the island of Corsica, Napoleon Bonaparte, stepped onto the stage of history. From a humble artillery officer, he swiftly rose to fame as a brilliant general, and by 1804 he had crowned himself Emperor of France, carrying within him the dream of conquering all of Europe. Napoleon repeatedly crushed European coalitions. Austerlitz, 1805, the Battle of the Three Emperors, where he defeated Russia and Austria in a single day. Jena-Auerstedt, 1806, the Prussian army shattered before his lightning-fast maneuvers. Wagram, 1809, Austria was brought to its knees once again. The map of Europe was redrawn time and time again by his hand. But his boundless ambition also sowed the seeds of his downfall. In 1812, Napoleon made the greatest mistake of his career, invading Russia. Over 600,000 troops crossed the border, but instead of a swift victory, they faced the Russian scorched earth strategy and the merciless winter. By the time they retreated, less than 10% of his soldiers made it home alive. The cracks in his empire began to widen. The European powers formed the Sixth Coalition and marched on Paris. In 1814, Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the island of Elba. But the tiger was not yet dead. In March 1815, Napoleon crossed the sea back to France with just one sentence: "If any of you would shoot your emperor, here I stand." The regiment sent to arrest him instead joined his ranks. He quickly regained power, launching the brief but intense 100 Days. But on June 18, 1815, at Waterloo, Napoleon was decisively defeated by the combined forces of Britain and Prussia. He was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he spent his final years in isolation until his death in 2021. The Napoleonic Wars claimed between 3.5 and 6 million lives, shook all of Europe, and left behind a legacy of military strategy and legal reforms still studied today. Napoleon once said, "Victory belongs to the most persevering." Yet it was his relentless pursuit of limitless ambition that led him from the pinnacle of power to the depths of defeat.
4. The Three Kingdoms War, Heroes and a Tragedy for the Ages. By the late 2nd century, the Eastern Han dynasty was in decline. Corruption ran rampant, and the peasantry suffered in poverty. In 184, the Yellow Turban Rebellion erupted, marking the beginning of an age of chaos. From this point on, warlords rose to seize power. Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Quan, and Chinese history entered its most celebrated yet blood-soaked chapter, the Three Kingdoms. Cao Cao, cunning, ruthless, holding the emperor hostage to command the realm. Liu Bei, benevolent, winning hearts, sworn brother to Guan Yu and Zhang Fei. Sun Quan, young but resolute, safeguarding the lands of Jiangdong. The factions clashed relentlessly, but the first major climax came at the Battle of Red Cliffs, 208. Here, the Liu Bei-Sun Quan alliance used a fire attack to burn Cao Cao's fleet of hundreds of thousands, preserving the three-way balance of power. This era was the golden age of strategy and cunning. Zhuge Liang's 7 attacks on Qishan, borrowing the east wind, and borrowing arrows with straw boats. Sima Yi's patient defense slowly wearing down Shu Han's strength. But beyond the brilliance of generals lay unending slaughter. China's population fell from around 56 million in the Eastern Han to just over 16 million by the end of the Three Kingdoms. Tens of millions perished from war, famine, and plague. In 263, Shu Han was conquered by Cao Wei. Only a few years later, in 280, Wei was overthrown by the Jin dynasty under Sima Yan, who annexed eastern Wu and unified China. The war ended, but at the cost of nearly a century of bloodshed. The Three Kingdoms is more than history. It is a cultural icon immortalized in the novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, honoring heroes, strategists, and legendary battles. Yet, behind the epic lies the truth. 36 to 40 million lives lost, a tragedy the world must remember. As the ancients said, in times of great chaos, heroes are born. But often, heroes themselves are but pawns in the grand game of power, a game paid for in the lives of countless innocents.
5. The Lushan Rebellion, the civil war that shook the Tang Dynasty. In the mid-8th century, the Tang Dynasty stood at its peak under Emperor Xuanzang. The empire was wealthy, culturally brilliant, and militarily powerful. Yet behind the splendor, the court was rotting with decadence, corruption, and factional infighting. Amidst this, a gifted but dangerously ambitious general, Lushan, rose to prominence. Trusted by the emperor, he commanded 3 major armies, but secretly nurtured a plan for rebellion. In 755, Lushan suddenly rose in revolt under the banner of purging treacherous ministers and protecting the emperor. In reality, he marched over 150,000 troops straight into Luoyang, then seized the capital Chang'an. The imperial court plunged into chaos. Emperor Xuanzang fled to Sichuan, and a brutal civil war began, lasting nearly a decade. Rebel forces controlled much of northern China, proclaiming the Yan dynasty. Hundreds of battles raged, cities changed hands repeatedly. Civilians were trapped between armies, suffering looting, famine, and plague. Internal strife plagued the rebels as well. In 757, Lushan was assassinated by his adopted son, but his death did not end the war. His successors continued the fight. It was not until 763 that the Tang finally crushed the rebellion, but the price was staggering. An estimated 13 to 36 million dead from warfare, starvation, and disease. The Tang's military and economic strength were shattered, never to return to its former glory. The Lushan rebellion marked a turning point, heralding the decline of one of China's most brilliant dynasties. It was not merely a revolt. It was a grim reminder of how giving one man too much power can destroy an empire. And more than 1,200 years later, the name Lushan still echoes as a symbol of treachery and devastation. 6. Mongol-Song War, 1235 to 1279, a conflict that lasted nearly half a century. 2 powers, 1 dream of hegemony. In the 13th century, the Mongolian steppes thundered beneath the hoofs of Genghis Khan's armies and his successors. After sweeping through vast swaths of Asia and Europe, the Mongol Empire turned its gaze southward, towards the Song dynasty, which then ruled China.
The Song dynasty was renowned for its culture and economy, but was militarily weak, relying heavily on fortified walls and complex defense systems. At first, the Mongols and the Song joined forces to eliminate a common enemy, the Jin dynasty. But when the Jin collapsed in 1234, the spoils of war and newly conquered territories became the seeds of discord. Just a year later, in 1235, full-scale war erupted between the two sides. The Mongols deployed highly mobile tactics, with cavalry as swift as the wind, striking relentlessly. The Song relied on fortified cities and artillery, holding out while attempting counterattacks. The war dragged on for decades, with multiple truces breaking down into renewed hostilities. Major battles, such as the Siege of Xiangyang in 1268 to 1273, became legendary. The Mongols used massive stone-throwing trebuchets built by Persian engineers to smash through the strongest Song defenses. In 1276, the Song capital, Linnan, modern-day Hangzhou, fell, forcing the imperial court to flee south. Loyalist forces established the Southern Song court in exile, continuing the resistance. The end came at the Battle of Yamen in 1279, a brutal naval clash between the Song fleet and Mongol forces. When defeat became inevitable, loyal minister Liu Fu leapt into the sea with the young Emperor Zhao Bing in his arms, ending the Song dynasty.
7. Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, the greatest civil war of the 19th century. From a dream of heaven to an ocean of blood. By the mid-19th century, China was in turmoil, famine, corruption, oppression, and the aftershocks of humiliating defeats to Western powers. Against this backdrop emerged Hong Xiuquan, a man who claimed to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ. He called for the establishment of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, a utopian realm free from oppression, where all people were equal. The dream was beautiful, but the road to it was drenched in blood. The uprising begins. In 1850, the Taiping movement erupted in Guangxi province. Hong's call to arms spread like wildfire among China's poor peasants. By 1853, Taiping forces, tens of thousands strong, captured Nanjing and made it their capital, renaming it Heavenly Capital. A brutal war. The Taiping forces were organized as a theocratic military, enforcing strict discipline, but also marked by extreme measures. The Qing dynasty fought back fiercely, aided by Western advisors and weaponry. Many battles turned entire regions into infernos, with civilians paying the heaviest price. Both sides used scorched earth tactics, destroying crops and burning villages, causing famine and disease that claimed millions of lives. The bloody end. In 1864, Qing forces under General Zhang Guofan launched a final assault on Nanjing. After the city fell, soldiers and civilians alike were massacred. Hong Xiuquan died shortly before the fall. Some sources say suicide, others attribute it to illness and lack of medicine. Aftermath. Shocking numbers. Estimated death toll 20 to 30 million, making it the deadliest civil war in human history. The nation lay devastated, its economy shattered. The Taiping movement collapsed, leaving behind a bitter lesson on the cost of extreme ideology and the dangers of long-ignored social tensions. Source: Fairbank and Craig. Heaven unrealized, only hell remains. The Taiping Rebellion began with a promise of a better world, but ended in a sea of blood. It stands as a grim reminder that revolutions lacking realism and respect for human life can only lead to catastrophe.
8. The 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, the First World War. When the whole world was caught in the whirlpool of gunfire. In the mid-18th century, the world entered a fierce power struggle. European powers such as Britain, France, Spain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia clashed not only in Europe, but also on battlefields across the globe, from North and South America to Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. Many historians call this the First World War because its scope and scale far surpassed any previous conflict. Causes of the war. In Europe, the Kingdom of Prussia under Frederick the Great sought to expand its territory in Silesia, prompting Austria's determination to reclaim it. In North America, Britain and France fought over control of the Ohio Territory and Canada, leading to the French and Indian War. In Asia, the British and French East India Companies battled for dominance in India. Each front was connected to other theaters, creating an interconnected web of global conflict. Fierce battlefronts. In Europe, Prussia fought alongside Britain against the Austria-France-Russia-Sweden alliance. Frederick the Great became famous for his mobile tactics, though he had to fend off multiple enemies at once. In North America, British forces, supported by colonial troops and Native American allies, attacked French forts and eventually captured Quebec, 1759, a major turning point. In India, Britain defeated France at the Battle of Plassey, 1757, paving the way for dominance over the subcontinent. At sea, the Royal Navy seized control of trade routes, cutting off enemy reinforcements. End of the war and aftermath. The Treaty of Paris, 1763, brought the war to an end. Britain emerged as the leading naval superpower, gaining control of Canada, Florida, and key territories in India and the Caribbean. France lost most of its North American colonies, but retained a few small islands. Prussia held on to Silesia, cementing its position in Europe. Death toll. Around 900,000 to 1,400,000 soldiers and civilians. Historical significance. The 7 Years' War completely reshaped the global balance of power. Britain's naval supremacy laid the foundation for its vast empire, while France's massive war debt became one of the indirect causes of the French Revolution, 1789. A new era begins. When the 7 Years' War ended, the world was forever changed. Power, territories, and influence had shifted into an age where European empires dominated almost the entire planet.
9. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, Europe's bloodiest religious war. When faith turned into a battlefield. In the early 17th century, Europe was consumed by religious and political conflict. Protestants and Catholics were not only divided by faith, but also used religion as a pretext for their nations to vie for power. The war began in the Holy Roman Empire, modern-day Germany and surrounding areas, but quickly drew in almost every major European power. The spark in Prague. In 1618, the defenestration of Prague, when Protestant nobles threw imperial officials out of a castle window, lit the fuse. Protestant Bohemians rebelled against the Catholic Emperor Ferdinand II. What began as a local revolt soon escalated into a Europe-wide bloodbath due to alliances and rivalries. 4 bloody phases. 1. Bohemian phase, 1618 to 1625. The Protestant uprising was crushed by Catholic imperial forces at the Battle of White Mountain in 1620. 2. Danish phase, 1625 to 1629. King Christian IV of Denmark intervened, but was defeated by General Wallenstein. 3.
Swedish phase, 1630 to 1635. Swedish King Gustavus Adolphus brought Protestant victories, but was killed at Lutzen in 1632. 4. Franco-Swedish phase, 1635 to 1648. Catholic France allied with Protestants to curb Habsburg power, turning the war from a religious struggle into a pure power contest. Devastating consequences. Some German regions lost 20 to 40% of their population due to war, famine, and plague. Towns and villages were destroyed. Economies collapsed. Between 4.5 and 8 million people died, most of them civilians, making it one of history's deadliest religious wars. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 ended the war and granted religious freedom to the states of the Holy Roman Empire, established the modern system of sovereign nation-states, weakened the Habsburgs, and elevated France as Europe's leading power. Lessons from 3 decades of bloodshed. The 30 Years' War proved that when religion and politics intertwine, the result can be a catastrophe that scars generations. 10. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953. The forgotten war of the Cold War era. A divided peninsula. After World War II, the Korean peninsula, once occupied by Japan, was liberated, but split in two along the 38th parallel. North Korea, backed by the Soviet Union, adopting a communist regime. South Korea, supported by the United States, adopting a capitalist system. Deep ideological rifts, combined with the tensions of the Cold War, meant the fuse for war was already lit, just waiting for the spark. North Korea crosses the 38th parallel. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces launched a surprise invasion, storming across the 38th parallel and capturing Seoul within days. South Korean and United Nations troops, led by the U.S., were pushed back to the Pusan perimeter, a small defensive line in the far south. A stunning counterattack. In September 1950, General Douglas MacArthur executed the bold Incheon landing, a brilliant amphibious assault that turned the tide. UN forces recaptured Seoul and pushed deep into North Korea, advancing toward the Chinese border. China enters the war. In October 1950, hundreds of thousands of Chinese volunteer troops poured across the Yalu River, launching massive offensives. UN forces were driven back, and the front lines seesawed back and forth around the 38th parallel. A war of attrition. By mid-1951, the conflict had settled into a bloody stalemate. Brutal battles, like Heartbreak Ridge and Pork Chop Hill, cost thousands of lives, yet the territorial lines barely shifted. The 1953 Armistice. On July 27, 1953, both sides signed an armistice at Panmunjom. The peninsula remained divided, separated by the 4-kilometer-wide demilitarized zone along the 38th parallel. The aftermath. Estimated 2.5 to 3 million deaths, most of them civilians. Cities reduced to rubble, economy shattered. Left behind one of the most dangerous military flashpoints in the world to this day. A war that never truly ended. Despite more than 70 years of ceasefire, North and South Korea are still technically at war, a lasting symbol of the Cold War's unresolved tensions. And there you have it, the top 10 bloodiest wars in history, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. These wars aren't just numbers on a casualty list, they're stark reminders of the staggering cost of power, ambition, and hatred. Which war do you find the most unforgettable? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can all learn together. If you enjoyed this video and want to support more fascinating history content, don't forget to like, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.